The sky above cracked with fire as alien warships clashed in orbit. A great battle had broken out between the royal houses of the planet Eltheris. The jungle below trembled with each explosion. Trees burst into flames. Thunder rolled through the valleys. Soldiers screamed. Machines burned. It was the kind of war that changed planets forever. Hidden under thick jungle leaves, the human crouched. His name was Rain. His armor was scratched, his side wounded, and his weapon gone. He hadn't come here to fight. He had come as part of a peace group, a helper, not a soldier. But now he was stuck in the middle of something deadly. His shuttle had been shot down the moment it entered the skies. No one responded to his signals. He was alone. Then, he heard it. A soft whimper. Weak, broken. He moved carefully through the trees, pushing vines aside, his boots sinking into the mud. There, half buried in the roots of a tree, was someone he never expected to see. She was one of them. An alien. But not just any alien. Her skin shimmered with a faint blue glow. Her armor, though damaged, carried the royal mark. She was a princess of Eltheris, and she was bleeding. She looked up at him, eyes full of pain, but also pride. Her lips parted trying to speak, but only blood came out. Her hand reached for a weapon she no longer had. Rain didn't move to hurt her. He knelt beside her and placed a hand on her shoulder. She winced but didn't pull away. "You're not safe here," he said, even though he knew she didn't understand his language, "and neither am I." Her breathing was shallow. Every second her life slipped away. He looked around. Smoke rose in the distance. Soldiers would be searching. Maybe her kind. Maybe others. But he knew something by the look in her eyes. No, one was coming back for her. He had seen it before in war zones, when power and pride meant more than loyalty. Her people had left her to die because she had become weak. A burden. An embarrassment. Rain sighed and pulled a small medical patch from his belt. He pressed it against the wound on her side. She gasped, but didn't resist. Her skin was cold. Her blood shimmered like stars under the leaves. Strange, beautiful, and heartbreaking. He knew what he had to do. Lifting her in his arms, he stood. She was light but fragile. Every step would hurt her, but staying meant death. He didn't know where safety was, but he couldn't leave her here. Not like this, not when she was abandoned. As he carried her, she whispered something, a word he didn't understand. Her hand clutched his armor, not strong, but desperate. He looked down at her face. Her eyes were still open, watching him, studying him. Rain started to fall, washing the blood and ash from the trees. It cooled his skin but made the ground slick. Every step was harder than the last. He moved through thorns and broken branches, shielding her with his body. He slipped once, landing hard, but kept her safe in his arms. Somewhere above, a ship screamed across the sky. Not human, not friendly. He didn't stop. The jungle would hide them for now. If they survived the night, maybe he could find food. Maybe water. Maybe help. She coughed and shifted in his arms, her lips close to his ear. "Why?" she asked, her voice weak but clear. Rain didn't answer right away. He looked ahead at the endless jungle, dark and full of danger. "Because no one else will," he said quietly. And then, step by step, he walked deeper into the unknown with the princess in his arms. Rain moved through the dense jungle, the alien, princess still cradled in his arms. Her body was burning with fever now. Whatever energy her kind had, it was slipping fast. She barely opened her eyes anymore, but her fingers still gripped his armor. Weak, but not gone. The trees above twisted together, thick branches blocking most of the sunlight. Strange creatures moved in the shadows. Some watched him from a distance, their eyes glowing through the leaves. Others made sounds that didn't belong to any animal he knew. But Rain kept walking. He found a small rocky overhang and stopped beneath it. It wasn't a shelter, but it was better than being out in the open. Carefully, he lowered her down onto a bed of dry leaves. She groaned, and he froze, her face twisted with pain. The wound on her side had reopened. Blood soaked through the patch he had used. His supplies were almost gone. He pulled off his armored glove and reached into his belt pouch, bringing out a tiny medical stick. It was human tech. Basic, but maybe enough. He pressed it to her wound and activated it. A soft hum vibrated through the air, and the tool sealed part of the skin. It wouldn't last long, but it might keep her alive until nightfall. She blinked up at him, her glowing green eyes, dull now, her lips parted again. "You are enemy," she whispered. Rain sat beside her. "Not today," he replied. She stared at him like she didn't understand. Then her eyes closed and her chest rose and fell slowly. He checked her pulse. Still there. As night crept in, the sounds of the jungle changed. Louder, sharper. A distant roar echoed through the trees. Rain picked up a sharp stick shaped like a spear. He didn't trust the jungle to stay silent. Predators moved in the dark. He lit a small fire using dried bark and a spark unit. The flames gave off little heat, but the light kept some of the creatures away. He didn't sleep. He sat beside her all night, keeping watch. The princess muttered in her language in her sleep. Names, commands, maybe memories. He didn't know. But he stayed. When dawn came, the air was colder. Fog crept along the ground. Rain looked down at her face. Her skin had lost some of its glow, but her breathing was steady. She was still alive. He looked around. They couldn't stay. The battle may have moved on, but scouts could still be nearby. Drones, hunters, or worse, her own people who didn't want her found. Rain packed what little he had and lifted her again. She stirred, eyes barely open. "Where are you taking me?" she asked. "Somewhere safer than here," he said. "There is no safe place," she whispered. Rain didn't answer. He didn't believe in giving up, even when it was hopeless. Earth taught him that. His kind had survived worse. They crossed a shallow river, its water dark but clean. He stopped for a moment to let her drink. She sipped weakly, then leaned her head against his chest. No words, just silence between them now. Suddenly, movement. In the trees ahead. Rain dropped low, shielding her behind his body. Something large stepped into the light. It wasn't a soldier, it wasn't human, it was a beast, massive, 4 legs, scaled armor across its back, eyes like burning coals. The princess gasped. Her voice trembled. "A Krar beast," she said. "It hunts the wounded." Rain didn't flinch. He held the sharp stick tight, even though it was useless against something that size. The beast growled, then began to move closer. Slow, careful. It had seen them. Rain stood in front of her. "If you want her," he said, voice low, "you'll have to go through me." The beast stopped. Then it took another step. Rain didn't run, not this time. The Krar beast stood tall, muscles twitching under its dark armored skin. Steam blew from its nostrils. Its eyes glowed like embers locked onto Rain. It could smell weakness, pain, blood. That made the alien princess a target. That made Rain a threat. He tightened his grip on the crude spear. It wasn't much, just a sharpened branch hardened at the tip with fire. Against a monster like this, it was nearly useless. But Rain didn't move. His feet were firm, his breathing slow, his eyes calm. Behind him, the princess tried to sit up. Her body trembled. She coughed, then fell back down. "No," she whispered. "You cannot fight it. Even my people fear the Krar. It feels pain but doesn't stop. It only stops when the prey is gone." Rain didn't look back at her. "Then I just have to make it look away," he muttered. The beast let out a low snarl. Its front paw stepped forward, claws sinking into the dirt. The ground shook slightly. It was testing the distance, testing Rain, and then it charged. Rain didn't wait. He ran forward with a roar, not away, but straight at the monster. The spear jabbed out, striking the beast's side. It bounced off the thick scales. The craw roared in anger and swung its massive claw. Rain ducked. The claw missed his head by inches. He rolled, grabbing a rock, and slammed it into the side of the beast's leg. The beast turned fast and slammed its tail into Rain's chest. Air exploded from his lungs as he was thrown into a tree. Pain shot through his back. He hit the ground hard, coughing, ribs screaming. His vision blurred, but he saw something. The craw was not looking at him anymore. It turned toward the princess. She lay in the open, breathing hard, barely able to lift. Her head. No, Rain gasped. He pushed himself up, leaning against the tree. Blood ran from his lip. The craw moved toward her, slow and sure. It thought the threat was over. It thought it had won. Rain grabbed his broken spear and ran. His legs were heavy, but his heart burned. He jumped onto the beast's back and jammed the sharp wood into the soft space between its shoulder blades. The craw screamed. It twisted wildly, trying to throw him off. Rain held on with one arm, jabbing again and again. Not to kill, but to make it hurt. To remind it he was still a problem. The craw bucked hard and slammed sideways into a tree. Rain fell. Dirt filled his mouth. His ears rang, but the beast wasn't coming for him. It was backing away, wounded, confused, growling low. It turned and disappeared into the trees, leaving deep claw marks behind. Rain crawled back to the princess. His chest burned, his arms shook. He knelt beside her. Still alive, he said, panting. Her eyes were wide. She looked at him like he wasn't real. You made it run, she said softly. Rain grinned through blood. Guess it didn't like my cooking. She gave a small laugh. The first sound of warmth since they met. Then she coughed and closed her eyes again. Rain checked her pulse. Still there. He looked at his hands. Covered in blood, some his, some not. They had survived the craw. But more dangers waited. He knew it. The jungle was only the beginning. They still had no food, no real shelter, and no idea who else was hunting them. But something had changed. In her eyes, she didn't see him as just a human anymore. Now she saw someone who wouldn't leave her behind. Rain sat near the princess as the last light of day slipped behind the tall trees. The fire crackled weakly beside them, casting flickering shadows on the leaves. The air smelled of damp earth and smoke. His body ached from the fight, his ribs bruised, his arms scratched. But he didn't care. She was still alive. The alien princess lay on a blanket of leaves, her body still and quiet. Her skin had lost some of its shine. Her wound was healing slowly, but the fever hadn't broken. She was strong, but she was losing strength each hour. Rain had seen it before, in war, in rescue missions. The quiet before the worst part came. He placed a small piece of dried ration on a rock and heated it over the fire. It wasn't much, just emergency food. Dry, tasteless, but it kept the body alive. He cut a piece and moved beside her. Try this, he said softly. Her eyes opened, slightly, glowing faintly in the firelight. I don't eat your kind's food, she whispered. Well, your kind left you to die, he answered without anger. So right now, I'm all you've got. She looked at him for a moment. Then, slowly, she opened her mouth. He helped her take a bite. She chewed slowly, her face tight from pain, but she swallowed. It tastes like burnt air, she said. Rain smiled. That's the best part. She let her head rest back, staring up at the dark canopy above. Stars peeked through the gaps. The sounds of night returned to the jungle. Insects clicking, birds crying in the distance. Something larger moving far off but not coming closer. She turned her head slightly toward him. My name is Kailari, she said. Rain blinked. It was the first time she had offered anything about herself. Rain, he said. She nodded slightly. Rain, she repeated, like she was testing the shape of the word. Then her voice dropped to a whisper. Why are you doing this? He didn't. answer right away. He looked into the fire. Because someone should, he said. She didn't respond. Her eyes closed again, not from distrust, but from exhaustion. Rain checked the edges of the wound again. The seal from his tool was holding, but just barely. She needed real help. Soon. He sat beside her all night, one hand on his spear, the other resting on his knee. He didn't sleep much. Every noise made him alert, but nothing came. At dawn, he packed the little they had left. She was too weak to walk, so once again he lifted her into his arms. "You don't have to carry me," she murmured. "I know," he replied. They moved carefully through the jungle. Rain followed the sounds of running water. He hoped to find a stream. If there was water, maybe there were signs of life, or safety. Hours passed. The terrain grew steeper. Vines pulled at his legs. Rocks made his steps harder. Sweat poured down his face, mixing with blood and dirt. But he didn't stop. Kailari opened her eyes now and then. Her gaze was softer than before. "My people would have left you," she said. "I'm not your people," he answered. Suddenly he stopped. Up ahead beyond the trees was a cliff, and beyond that, a river. But more than that, he saw something else. A signal tower, ruins, old tech, maybe not working, but it was something. Rain moved toward it, hope building in his chest. Then he froze. Near the tower were shapes, tall, armed, soldiers, but not human, not hers either. A third force. Mercenaries. Rain's grip tightened. His eyes scanned. For cover. Kailari saw his face change. "What is it?" she asked. He looked down at her. "We've got company," he said. She tried to move but winced. Rain lowered her behind a fallen tree and crouched beside her. They had come looking for something. Maybe her, maybe him, maybe both. Rain didn't know, but he was ready. This time he wouldn't run. Rain crouched low behind the thick fallen tree. He kept one hand on Kailari's shoulder, and the other wrapped tightly around the crude spear. His breath was calm, but his heart pounded. Just ahead, beyond the tree line, the mercenaries moved, like shadows. There were 3 of them. Tall, armored, not like her people and definitely not like his. Their armor was black with glowing green lines across the chest. Their weapons were long and sleek, almost silent. Rain had seen their kind before. Paid killers. They didn't serve nations. They served credits. Kailari looked at him, her face, pale and weak. "They are from the Cold Ring Guild," she whispered. "Hunters. They smell blood and chase it across stars." Rain frowned. "So they're not here for fun." She shook her head slowly. "They track power, rank, secrets." He studied the way they moved. Professional, smooth. One checked the signal tower, scanning the broken tech. Another knelt in the dirt, tracing marks. The third walked straight toward the jungle edge. Toward them. Rain pulled Kailari gently behind the roots and flattened himself beside her. The mercenary was getting closer. He could hear the crunch of leaves under metal boots. The spear in his hand wasn't enough. Rain reached for a rock. Smooth, round, heavy. The mercenary stepped within 10 feet. Rain held his breath. Suddenly, a screech broke through the trees. High-pitched, wild. The mercenary stopped and turned. From above, a winged creature dove out of the trees, claws slashing at the soldier's helmet. It wasn't big, but it was fast and loud. The mercenary raised his arm to block the attack. His rifle dropped from his grip. Rain didn't wait. He leapt out from behind the tree and slammed the rock into the back of the soldier's head. Phew, helmet cracked. The mercenary stumbled. Rain grabbed the rifle from the ground and turned it toward the second soldier, who had started to move toward the noise. One shot. Clean. The rifle kicked in his hands. The blast hit the second mercenary in the chest, sending him crashing back against the signal tower. The third turned fast, raising his weapon. Ryan ducked behind the tree again. The air burned as a shot ripped past him. Kailari pulled herself up, slightly, her fingers trembling. "I can help," she said, her voice weak but steady. Rain looked at her. "You can barely move," he said. Her eyes glowed faintly. "I don't need to." She pressed her hand to the ground. A soft hum filled the air. The third mercenary stepped closer. The earth beneath him shifted. Roots twisted up from the ground, wrapping around his legs. He tried to break free, but the vines gripped tighter. Rain stood up and fired. The shot hit clean. Silence returned. The creatures in the trees fled. Rain breathed out slowly. He dropped the weapon and looked at Kailari. "Remind me not to make you angry," he said. She smiled weakly. Too late. He helped her sit against the tree and checked her wound, still sealed. But her strength was nearly gone. The signal tower wasn't working. Dead wires. No power. But the mercenaries had gear, a broken comm unit, damaged armor, energy cells. Rain gathered what he could. He built a stretcher from branches and rope from the mercenary packs. Gently, he lifted Kailari onto it and tied the frame to his back. The weight was heavy but not impossible. "Where are we going now?" she asked. "South," he said. "I saw smoke earlier. Maybe a camp. Maybe someone who can help." She closed her eyes again. "Most would have left me by now," she said quietly. Rain didn't reply. He just walked. Through jungle. Through heat. Through silence. Every step took him deeper into the unknown. But he wasn't turning back. Not while she still breathed. The sky had darkened, not from nightfall, but from the storm brewing above. Thick gray clouds rolled in fast, swallowing the sun and casting long shadows over the jungle. The trees bent slightly in the wind. Leaves swirled around Rain's boots as he pushed forward with Kailari strapped to the stretcher on his back. The air grew heavy. Each breath felt thicker than the last. Kailari stirred weakly. "Storm winds. Not natural," she said in a faint voice. Rain glanced up. "This planet has weather like everything's trying to kill us." She shook her head. "No. This is called a sky flare. It's alive. It hunts energy, heat, life." He stopped walking. "Wait. What?" She opened her eyes slightly, enough to show fear. "The sky flare was once controlled by the elders of my bloodline. But after the Civil War, it became wild. Now it hunts anything left behind." Lightning flashed in the distance. But there was no thunder. Just a low, pulsing sound like breathing. The kind that crawled into your skin. Rain felt the wind shift. It wasn't coming from one direction anymore. It swirled in circles around him. The jungle fell silent. Birds vanished. Insects stopped moving. Even the leaves on the trees stayed frozen. Kailari's voice trembled. "It knows I'm here. I carry the royal blood." Rain turned and looked into the dark horizon. A wall of mist was moving toward them fast. It glowed faintly with shifting colors. Blue, red, green, like the reflection of fire on water. But it wasn't water. It was alive. "We need cover," he said, pulling her closer to him and tightening the straps. He scanned the area and spotted a narrow crack in a rock wall nearby. A cave. Small, maybe deep. Enough to hide. He sprinted. The wind chased them. The light from the sky flare shimmered through the jungle, bending around trees, crawling across the ground like fingers. He reached the cave and slid inside, dragging her in behind him. The space was narrow, cold, but deep enough to block the storm. Just as he pulled his feet in, the wall of color passed over the cave entrance. Rain turned off the small light on his belt and held his breath. Outside, the sky flare stopped. He could see its glow through the cave mouth. It hovered just outside. Swirling slowly, Kailari's hand gripped his wrist. Her voice was a whisper. "It remembers me." Rain didn't speak. His heart pounded in his chest. The sky flare let out a soft, eerie howl, neither wind nor voice, but something between. Then, it moved on. For now. Rain waited several minutes before he allowed himself to breathe normally. He looked at Kalari. "You really are royalty, aren't you?" She nodded weakly. "I am the last daughter of the throne. My sisters betrayed me, left me for dead. They didn't want a weak heir." Rain sat back against the cold wall. "And now everything wants you dead." She looked at him. "Then why are you still here?" He stared at the glowing cave entrance, the light slowly fading. "Because leaving someone behind isn't human," he said. Silence filled the cave for a long time. Kalari slowly leaned her head against his shoulder. "I would have hated your kind before this," she said. Rain gave a tired smile. "Good thing I'm not here for your approval." Outside, the sky flare vanished into the trees, but its memory remained. Rain knew it would come again. Everything out here wanted to finish what her people started, but they weren't done yet. Tomorrow they would move again, and Rain would carry her through every storm if that's what it took. The next morning, light returned to the jungle, soft and golden. Birds sang again and insects moved through the leaves. It was as if the sky flare had never existed, but the air still felt heavy. Something was different. Rain helped Kailari drink from his canteen. Her skin was warm and her breathing deeper. She was stronger than yesterday, still not ready to walk, but the fever had lowered. Her eyes looked clearer now. "You should leave me," she said quietly. "You're running out of strength. You can't carry me forever." Rain looked down at her, tired but firm. "I'm not leaving you," he said. "We've come too far." She looked away, eyes on the jungle beyond the cave. "Then I need to tell you something." Rain waited. "My sisters, they didn't just leave me behind," she said. "They sent the mercenaries. They want me dead, before I reach the core lands." He blinked. "Your own blood?" Kailari nodded. "They saw me as a weakness. I refused to take part in the executions. I helped the wounded escape. I showed mercy. That made me dangerous to them." Rain stood, slowly. "So we're not just surviving anymore, we're being hunted." She nodded again. Just then, a sound in the distance. Not a beast, not thunder engines, small ones, speeders. Rain moved to the edge of the cave and peered out through the leaves. 4 sleek hoverbikes cut through the jungle, moving fast and quiet. Each one had a rider in the same black and green armor as the mercenaries from before. But this time they carried banners, royal banners. Kailari's eyes widened. "My sisters sent royal assassins. That means they're close. They're getting desperate." Rain turned toward her. "Then we move, now." She reached out. "No. Listen to me. If they find you with me, they'll kill you without question. But if I go out alone, weak and unarmed, they might take me back to the city." Rain narrowed his eyes. "And what, they'll forgive you, welcome you home?" "No," she said. "But it will buy you time to escape. They'll focus on me." Rain's voice grew firm. "That's not happening." Kailari's hand tightened on his wrist. "Rain, please. You've done enough. More than anyone ever would. Don't throw your life away for a fight that was never yours." He stepped back, jaw tight. "I don't care whose fight it is," he said. "When I found you, I had no reason to help, but I did. And now I'm not leaving you to them. You're not just some mission anymore." Kailari looked up at him, her eyes shimmering. "You're a strange creature, Rain." "Earth makes us strange," he replied. Suddenly a warning beep echoed from one of the stolen comm units Rain had taken from the dead mercenaries. He picked it up. A message was playing. "Target locked. Coordinates confirmed. Royal unit approaching. Authorization, direct elimination." Kailari stared at the device. "They're not taking me alive," she said softly. Rain gritted his teeth. "Then let's make them regret trying." He lifted her again, faster this time. She didn't resist. She rested her head against his shoulder, her voice low. "I'm sorry." "For what?" he asked. For being raised by people who don't understand mercy. Rain said nothing. He moved fast through the jungle, away from the signal and the hoverbikes. The trees blurred past him, and Kailari's breathing steadied beside his ear. But deep in the trees, the royal assassins had already spread out. And this time, they weren't just hunting a traitor. They were hunting the human who dared to protect her. The jungle was no longer a place of hiding. It was a trap. Rain could feel it in his bones. Every branch that snapped behind him, every strange silence between bird calls, told him they were being hunted. And this time, the hunters weren't guessing. They knew. Kailari hung against his, back, arms weak around his shoulders. Her breathing was sharp but steady. Her wound had reopened slightly, but she refused to let him stop. The stolen comm unit from earlier buzzed again. Rain threw it into a stream and kept moving. "They've boxed us in," Kailari said. "They'll push us into the firelands. Once we cross the ridge, the ground becomes black glass and open sky." Rain paused behind a wide trunk. "Then we're heading into hell." She coughed and managed a faint smile. "That's where I was born." The ridge was near. He could see the ground beginning to harden. Trees thinned out. The air shimmered with heat. Steam hissed from cracks in the black earth. Lava rivers glowed deep below, far enough to fall but close enough to feel. Rain set her down gently behind a cluster of dark stones. "We'll rest a second," he said, his voice low. But there was no time. A bolt of energy blasted into the stone beside his head. It cracked open, throwing dust into the air. He grabbed Kailari and rolled behind a ridge wall. Footsteps approached, not fast, confident. 4 shadows spread across the ridge, tall, armored, glowing with the royal insignia. One voice rang out, calm, cruel and familiar to Kailari. "You were always too soft, sister." Kailari's eyes burned with anger. "And you were always a coward, Lissari." Rain peeked over the rock. The woman in front had the same glowing skin, the same emerald eyes, but colder. Her armor was cleaner, stronger, more regal. The others with her said nothing. They just raised their weapons. "You disgraced the throne," Kailari said. "Not me." "You gave it up the moment you saved a human," Lissari replied. "You let weakness guide your choices." Rain stood slowly, stepping in front of Kailari. "Weakness? She's still breathing, and you're the one who sent others to kill her. That doesn't look like strength to me." Lysari tilted her head. "The human speaks. Loyal, isn't he? Shall I end his loyalty first?" Kailari's voice rang out. "He saved me, carried me when you left me to die. He's worth more than you ever were." Lysari raised her hand to signal her soldiers. But Kailari was already moving. She sat up and pressed her hand against the black stone. The rock shimmered, pulsing with light. "You forgot where we are," she said. The ridge trembled. Lava hissed through nearby cracks. Heat surged. Steam blasted. From below, Rain looked down. The stones were glowing under their feet. "What are you doing?" he asked. Kailari's eyes narrowed. "My sisters forgot the Fireland's answer to me." The ground erupted. A blast of steam shot between the royal soldiers, breaking their stance. One fell back, screaming as the heat burned through his armor. Another was thrown off the ridge by a sharp quake. Lissari stumbled. Rain grabbed Kailari and pulled her away as the ground split beneath them. A narrow path opened through the ridge, just wide enough to escape. They ran. Behind them, Lissari screamed, "You will never survive the throne." Rain looked back once, just as the rocks collapsed behind them, cutting them off. They reached a cooler patch of land just before the sun dipped beyond the horizon. Both fell to the ground, panting. Kailari's hands trembled. Her eyes stared at the sky. Rain knelt beside her. "You all right?" "I'm tired," she said, "but I'm not broken." He nodded slowly. "You saved us." She looked at him. "No, we saved each other." Night fell, but something had changed. Kailari had stopped running, and now she was ready to face what came next. The stars above shimmered with strange light, glowing through the black clouds like silent watchers. Rain sat on the rocky ledge beside the sleeping princess. The lava flows in the distance hummed softly, glowing like rivers of fire in the dark. It should have been peaceful, but peace didn't last long on this planet. Kalari stirred, waking slowly. Her body was still weak, but her eyes were clearer now, sharp, focused. The days of hiding had changed her. The fear that once lived in her voice was gone. "Where are we?" she asked. "Safe. For now," Rain replied. "No signs of them since the cave collapsed." Kalari slowly sat up, wincing. "They won't stop. My sister? She won't accept losing me. Not after the Firelands humiliated her." "She looked like someone used to winning," Rain said, "until you reminded her what power really is." Kalari looked out across the lava plains. "I'm done running." Rain didn't say anything. He waited. She turned to him. "We're going to the core lands." His eyes narrowed. "That's the heart of your empire, right?" She nodded. "It's where the throne rests, where all royal decisions are made, where my sisters hold control, and where I was meant to rule before they turned on me." "You want revenge?" "No," she said. "I want to finish what I started. This war is burning everything. Civilians, peacekeepers. Even the jungle is turning against us. If I take the throne, I can stop it. I can stop them." Rain stood, stretching his sore arms. "Then we'll get you there." She blinked. "You're not leaving?" He met her eyes. "I didn't carry you this far to watch your sisters tear down what's left of you. If you're walking into fire, I'll walk beside you." Kalari's lips parted slightly. A breath caught in her throat. No one had ever spoken to her like that, not even her closest guards. "Then we need a plan," she said. Rain knelt beside a flat stone and began drawing rough marks with the point of a broken blade. "From here, it's 4 days to the core lands. The first 2 are lava plains, the last 2 are royal territory, heavily patrolled, forts, drones, mines." "I know a secret path through the lava trails," Kalari said, "but once we reach the throne city, we'll need help." Rain looked up. "You know anyone still loyal?" Kalari hesitated. "One." "Who?" "My old guardian, Vesha. She raised me before the throne demanded obedience. She vanished after the coup, went into hiding in the old market ruins. If she's alive, she'll help." Rain nodded. "Then we find her." They packed up what little they had left. Rain strapped his armor tighter, and Kalari fastened pieces of scavenged gear to her arms and legs. Her glow had returned, just faint, but it was there. As they crossed the first ridge, Kalari spoke again. "You've seen my kind at our worst," she said. "Do you still believe in me?" Rain glanced back. "You were abandoned, hunted, betrayed, and still, you fight to save a world that left you to die. That's all I need to believe in." For the first time, Kalari smiled without pain. They moved together across the hard glass terrain. The heat shimmered under their feet. In the far distance, the towers of the throne city rose into the sky, sharp, cold, and unwelcoming. Rain knew what waited there, but he wasn't afraid, because she wasn't alone anymore. The throne city stood like a fortress carved into the sky. Towering spires of silver and black rose from the red hills, ringed by floating sentry drones and burning light barriers. It looked more like a weapon than a home. Rain and Kalari watched from a ridge just before dawn. The city glowed with power, but it was cold, silent. The heart of her people's rule, and her betrayal. Kalari tightened the straps on her worn armor. Her skin shimmered faintly in the morning light, and her eyes held the calm fire of someone who had stopped fearing the end. Rain stood beside her, weapon in hand, gaze locked on the narrow path winding toward the city's edge. "There's no turning back after this," she said. "I wasn't planning to," he answered. They moved under cover of steam and rock, following broken tunnels and forgotten paths Kalari remembered from her childhood. Her knowledge guided them past patrols, drones, and scanning eyes. But when they reached the inner gates, the danger changed. 2 guards stood between them and the entrance to the throne chamber. Not machines, not mercenaries. Royal guards, Kailari's people. She stepped forward and raised her hand. One guard's eyes widened. It's her. The other reached for his weapon. Rain moved, but Kailari lifted her voice. I am Kailari, daughter of the royal line. I claim right of return. The guards hesitated. In their world, that command meant pause, not war. Right of return has been denied by royal order, one said. Kailari took another step. Then it must be challenged. The guards didn't move, but they didn't fire either. Rain leaned close. What's challenge mean here? Kailari's face was calm. Trial by power. I must enter alone. I'm not letting you go in there by yourself. You've already done more than anyone. If I fall, you must make it out. Rain gripped her arm. That's not happening. Before she could reply, the gates opened. Slowly. Heavily. Inside was a wide hall, lined with glowing stone and floating banners of the throne. And at the far end stood Lysari, Kailari's sister, the false queen. Welcome home, little shadow, Lysari said, voice echoing through the chamber. Kailari walked forward, straight-backed. Rain stayed behind, hidden in the shadows just inside the door. You're alive. Impressive, Lysari said, stepping down from the platform. But it ends here. Kailari didn't blink. I call for challenge, Lysari laughed. You've barely healed, and you think you can stand against me? Kailari opened her palm. A ripple of energy flowed from her skin, lighting the floor beneath her feet. The throne hall responded. Ancient lights came to life. The walls pulsed. Lysari's face changed. You still carry the throne's blood? Kailari's voice was strong now. And I still carry the right. The 2 sisters clashed in the center of the chamber. Kailari was weaker, but her strikes were precise. Her power came from memory, from pain, from survival. Lysari's strength came from pride and fear. Rain watched, hand on his weapon, ready to step in. But Kailari didn't fall. She fought with the fire of someone who had been buried and refused to stay dead. At last, Lysari stumbled. Kailari's energy struck her across the chest, sending her to the floor. Kailari stood over her, breathing hard, shaking. The throne waited behind them, pulsing softly, silent. Rain stepped forward now, into the light. Kailari looked at him. It's done, she said. He nodded. So now what? She turned to the room of watching eyes, council members, guards, servants who had crept in to see what had happened. All of them waited for her command. I won't rule through fear, she said. I won't rule like them. Council voice asked. Then how will you rule? She looked at Rain, then back at them, with mercy and strength, the kind no one expects. Rain walked up beside her. You really going to sit on that throne? She looked at the cold metal seat, then shook her head. Not today. Instead, she turned to the room and said, Begin healing this world. I'll return when it's ready. They walked out together side by side. She was no longer the abandoned, and he was no longer the outsider. They had walked through death, betrayal, and fire and come out together.